welcome to the MadTrio podcast. This week we have the California Pariah, Jonathan Charney, James, the Fat Man Stevens, and Rob, the old guy.
From the world famous Rob Charney Show.
And we'll talk about former old television personalities. Come up after this. Today's show is brought to you by Audacity, the unforgettable party game for mischievous people. They have online monthly game nights on Discord, so make sure you stop by their Facebook page for event times and dates. You can also grab a free quarantine version of the game straight off their website. Audacity, the unforgettable party game for mischievous people. So 76 years ago today, April 11th, 1945, Robert Clary was liberated from Buchenwald, Nazi concentration camp. He was the youngest of 14 children. 12 of the members of his immediate family were sent to Auschwitz. Clary was the only survivor. When he returned to Paris after the war, he learned that 3 of his siblings had been taken away and had not been taken away and survived the Nazi occupation of France. He played Le Beau on the TV show Hogan's Heroes.
Yep. He did. He was the real deal.
And Felix Sela, the original cousin-it from Addams Family, dies.
He passed away.
84.
Yeah, no more cousin-it.
Which there's a great gig. Nobody knows what you look like.
Yeah, exactly. Well, isn't that like R2-D2?
Pretty much.
And C-3PO? Same thing. You don't know who these actors really look like.
Hester Ford, oldest living American with 108 great-grandchildren, dies at 116. It's an African and American lady. Now, she must have had an amazing freaking story. You imagine being 116 years old, growing up in America that way.
Wow.
And Louie guitarist Mike Mitchell of the Kingsmen, dead at 77.
Oh, my God. We just got a breaking news.
What is it?
The family says that former President Walter Mondale has died at age 93.
I didn't know he was still alive.
Vice President Walter Mondale.
Well, wow. When was he vice president?
He was vice president under Jimmy Carter, if I'm mistaken. Am I mistaken? Yeah, no, serving under Jimmy Carter. I got it. Wow.
So he was Speaker of the House. Or did they pick him?
No, he was elected as vice
sorry.
president.
You're right. I was thinking of Gerald Ford. Excuse me. I don't know why. Probably because they were both about as effectual.
Well, you know.
Effective presidents.
Whatever. I don't know. Yeah, you want to talk about crazy stuff. See, with Moscow's got a military build-up on the border with Ukraine. It's even bigger than it was in 2014.
They're telling Western nations to stay back.
This is crazy. They're going to go ahead and they're going to try to put the whole thing back together after breaking up.
That's going to be hard, I think, because of more of the aren't there like Kazakhstan type of countries that were part of the Soviet bloc that they would fight it with tooth and nail?
Well, the Ukrainians aren't going to let them walk in either, and supposedly NATO is supposed to do something, but what the heck are we going to do? And
NATO is just going to say, don't do that.
Yeah, I don't know. This is an interesting one.
I don't think they're going to be able to do anything. I mean, because you have a couple of reasons why I say that, because you have Russia and China who are basically cohorts now, and they don't trust each other. I just don't know. Something just doesn't scream that really interacting is going to be any, doesn't seem like it's a good bet.
So I like this. The Russians are just saying that it's an exercise, right? They're saying we're just practicing for an invasion. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. All right.
Good on you, buddy.
Yeah.
This is just the practice. So, guess how much Amazon's Lord of the Rings to cost for one season?
More than all the Game of Thrones.
Really?
$465 million for a single season.
Why would any studio pay that kind of money for a single season? Is it that? Do they really think they're going to make that much revenue from streaming advertisement?
Is if for one, Amazon, it's probably going to be a freemium. It's going to do something to probably get people to go. Plus the fact it's Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, but
Enough people will
Really?
watch it. Oh yeah.
You
There's
think?
what are they called? There's people who like what they do is study Tolkien.
yeah, okay. I mean, I get people being uber involved with storylines and books and like somebody else I know about Doom and things like that, right? And I understand that to a degree, but my goodness gracious, how many episodes are they talking about?
Let's see. Amazon Studios. The Lord of the Rings television show is going to cost all the gold in the Lonely Mountain. By the way, Hollywood Reporter, I actually appreciate that. Hollywood Reporter has confirmed that Amazon will spend roughly 650 New Zealand dollars, roughly 465 US dollars.
Why are we talking New Zealand? Is this a story out of New Zealand?
No, it's probably where it's going to be filmed.
Yeah, all right, got it.
See, what I can tell you is Amazon's going to spend, so far they don't say.
How many episodes?
So the figures were released as part of the New Zealand government's Official Information Act. Oh, wow.
Oh.
So far, I don't see anything where they actually say they may not be ready to release the details. So it sounds this is kind of a leak. By comparison, HBO's Game of Thrones cost roughly $100 million to produce per season, with its per episode cost around $6 million for the season one, eventually rising to $15 million per episode in season 8. Wow. So season 8 was the most expensive, and it was the worst, the worst season from everybody I know.
Yeah.
Wow. I don't know. It just.
So
I understand. So one of the problems I have, I mean, I'm a big streaming, as far as watching things now. I probably stream more stuff than I do. Well, we don't have cable, but we have satellite. But anyway, other than local news and stuff like that. And, we pay for all the different, whatever it may be, Discovery Plus, Disney Plus, Bravo.
Bob's Household Video.
Yeah, I mean, we pay for all those because there's always a show or two that we like to watch that kind of gets you that way. But part of buying into that service is we don't see advertisements. So how are they generating revenue to make that kind of a revenue back per
Membership.
episode?
It's probably going to be.
Really, but still,
it might be Prime only to see it. So
also everybody's going to be jumping on becoming a Prime member again.
that's what I would do.
Well, I'm already a Prime member, so
The other
Me
question,
too, so it doesn't do me any good.
right.
the other question is, do they have access to the Silmarillion? Because Christopher Tolkien hated Peter Jackson with a passion and basically said, "Yeah, you're not getting anything else from my father. Like my cold dead hands." So if they have actually access to the back of the backstory in the Silmarillion, this could be a version of Lord of the Rings that we've never gotten before. Have more in-depth information. It also, I think, depends on how they actually do it too. I mean, there's a lot of ifs in this.
Well, I guess I scratch my head and try to figure out, how these companies are going to make money, and they famously come out with some pretty good series, and after 1 year or 2 years, because they cost X amount of dollars to produce per episode, it's too much. We're not making enough money back, and they cancel them. And I have a half a dozen shows that I really like that they've all just canceled right off the bat because first season one or season 2 didn't make them enough money. Well, yeah, I mean, people are going in and paying the memberships. So if the membership money isn't enough, Netflix is one that really I watch a lot of Netflix, but it really kind of irritates me.
Netflix has to do it because now they don't have access to anybody's back catalog, so they have to
produce their own shows. You know what they're doing? They're buying shows and series from other countries.
Yeah,
and they're dubbing them.
Uh-huh.
Some of it is really bad.
Well, they have to because they no longer have access to anybody else's back catalog, so they got to do that. They also have to optimize their what shows make, if they don't do what numbers they want, they have to cut bait and run.
Yeah, well, see, there's the problem. If you're trying to attract people to stay with your service, and they're buying in because of 1 or 2 series that they really like, and then they cut those series, it's kind of like, okay, I'm done.
Yeah, I mean that's pretty much what people are doing.
So how does that work? And
It's all about first party content. That's all about, okay, cool, they're making this new show, I want to watch it. So people buy in until until that season is gone. That's probably why Disney Plus is doing a week-by-week release instead of releasing the whole thing a la carte like Netflix was doing.
Yeah, they're not the only one that is doing that. There was another network. I think it's HBO's copied that model.
Yeah, they're all dropping
another one.
Yeah, instead of having the whole thing there, here's the full library of that season. Okay, season 2 is up, and you get to see everyone. They're not doing that. They're dropping a new episode every week.
Yeah, because I think they're having a hard time retaining customers that way because people will binge watch it. Instead, now they're like semi-appointment television. So I think that they don't have a choice in that.
Yeah, well, there's a couple of shows that I watch that it's being done that way, and I've got an alert on my phone so I know, the new episode is dropped. And I got, okay, now I got to remind myself to watch that episode. So,
I do the same thing.
Yeah. And
it's like shit.
Yeah, it's like, okay, I got to do it. Because, I love to see, okay, season 2 is up, and you can stream all 10 or 12 episodes, whatever it may be, because,
That's
used
what
to
I
be,
like, too. It drives me nuts when I can't do that.
Can't do it. Now it's week by week, and then you look at them and you say, okay, so a season now is 10 episodes, when on pre-pandemic and normal times, whatever season of a show you're watching was up to 22 episodes for the year, and they've cut it down to like 10. And that's also a bit disturbing. It's like...
That drives me nuts, yeah. Like the WandaVision one that Disney had. I was watching that one, and then I'm like, I find out that it's episodic and they're doing it weekly, and I'm like, I waited till the whole thing was done.
Well, it's
I gotta ask you, could you get I keep trying to get into WandaVision, and I'm having a tough time with it.
Takes a little while, but I think it's a generational thing because I grew up with the Marvel universe, so I kind of understood already what was going on with her.
So when did you stop reading?
So to step in...
Oh, sorry, I didn't. James,
I didn't.
No, I apologize.
What are you talking about, Rob?
When did I stop?
Yeah. When did you stop reading comic books?
Oh, my. To be honest with you, I was not a huge comic book kid.
See, that's also, I think, is the disconnect, because James definitely read comic books. I've always kind of been into graphic novels and stuff like that.
Does Mad Magazine count?
Yeah.
All right.
That kind of counts.
That was the one, if I had one that I got all the time, was Mad Magazine as a kid, particularly like in junior high. During that period of time, that was my got to get it every month.
Well, see, that was one of the reasons why I think James saying a generational thing, because I think we grew up in the age where comic books, were really going full tilt. Don't you think, James? I mean, it's not the golden age, but
no, they were pretty popular still, and so I kind of already knew what was going on with her, but it was like I could understand like the first at least like 4 episodes.
Yeah, that's where I'm at.
What the hell's going on? And then you kind of start seeing little breaks, and I guess you could say her matrix, and you start piecing together what's actually going on. But yeah, I mean, as far as the Disney shows, it's not their best one. I was actually kind of disappointed a bit by it. So
I might have to watch it. I
still enjoyed it.
Yeah. You know what? Part of it was funny in the beginning when it was all kind of the 50s flavor stuff for me, and it was kind of like, okay. So I got that. That was kind of fun. But then
they explain why it keeps switching as it goes on.
Yeah, okay.
Right. So I'm going to switch back to one of our topics, because I was trying to figure out why this damn Lord of the Rings thing.
Already on to
Lord of the Rings. But here's the thing: the official description of Lord of the Rings brings screen for the very first time the heroic legends of the fabled Second Age of Middle-earth's history. This epic drama is set thousands of years before the events of J.R.R. Tolkien's The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings, and will take viewers back to an era in which the great powers were forged. The kingdoms rose to glory and fell to ruin. So basically, this is the Silmarillion. This is probably the backstory of Lothlorien and all that.
Okay.
Because now this makes sense on how they're expecting people to see it. Because instead of being like Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings, this is something that nobody's ever seen in any sort of context.
Well, that would make sense, wouldn't it? I mean, let's bring something totally new and attract people to it that way. Makes sense to me.
'Cause-
But then you're going to get people that are going to watch and they go, "Oh, this is token." It's, they'll complain. I guarantee it.
Oh, they're complaining. My only question is there's a lot of Tolkien fans that this. What do you think, James? Do you think this will be as big as Game of Thrones, or do you think this is just kind of taper out? Because I don't know.
I think they would do a disservice to themselves to try to compare it to Game of Thrones.
Well, I meant
I think that'd be the downfall.
Well, I meant
but I'm saying, literally, that's what I'm saying.
Okay.
If they're gonna pitch it that way, and they're gonna try to sell it that way, and it's gonna be the downfall of it if it doesn't take off, because Silmarillion versus Game of Thrones are two completely different things. I would be pissed off if I watch this thing and I see gratuitous sex scenes like I saw in Game of Thrones.
That's true. In Game of the Thrones, really, Game of the Thrones.
Game of the Thrones.
All of a sudden, I'm George Bush to Google.
Yeah, you are.
Because that's true. Because Game of Thrones starts off almost right off the bat with action and weird comments, like the Queen's question to one of the Stark daughters.
Am I the only person in the world that just never watched Game of Thrones? I mean,
no, John hasn't.
I've seen clips and pieces and episodes later on. I've never seen the whole thing.
I got so many people. Oh man, how could you not be watching it? We've watched every bit. Well, to be honest with you, for Paul and I, it was the gratuitous sex that was so rampant in the very beginning. It was like, this is not what I want to watch.
It's not your type of fantasy, not towards later on from what I saw.
That's what I hear. I hear that, okay, season 1 is, for all those people that want that stuff, that's what season 1 is all about. And then okay, season 2 got better and then you got, less of that. That's what I hear. I mean, so I don't know because I haven't watched it, but I mean, it was like, I wish they could give me a synopsis of season 1 so I understand I could just start at season 2 because it irritates me a little bit. I mean, I'm not being prudish. I understand some of it. Some of it is fine. I have no problems with it, but it was like a little over the top.
I think you and me are similar in that if there's sex or a nude scene that fits the story enough that you could justify doing it, but if it's just seemed gratuitous, then there's really I don't see a point of it.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the way I'm 100% that way. Like, because I've known people like, oh, why would you watch this movie? It's like, well, the sex scene was annoying, but this is the reason I saw it. This was the motivation behind it versus, oh, they're just barking for no reason. And I think I think James told me a lot of the sex scenes in the book have a purpose, don't they, James? More in the movies?
Yeah, for the most part, yeah. They use it as like some political maneuvering or some shit. So
okay, so real life. But so
yeah,
it's like working at a big blue box store.
I don't know. It's just weird. But anyway, maybe someday I'll watch it.
I've seen
when I'm hooked up to a ventilator or something.
That's what I'm kind of saying is like, I mean, if they take
I Am Your Father,
the Lord of the Rings, and they keep it more to Tolkien's universe versus anything that was put out by Martin, they'll be successful if they stick more towards Tolkien. If they take it and do like an HBO spin on it, which a lot of HBO shows have nudity and sex in it, I think they're going to lose audience.
Mm-hmm.
A big market of their audience.
What would you think it would be somewhat of a families would want to watch this? To me, I would think
if they take it and make it violent, with the comedy elements that they had in the show or the movies, like when the dwarf and elf, were sitting there doing body counts, things like that. Stay away from where they went with the Hobbit.
Yes,
and keep it more towards the books and that universe, even though if they're going for the Silmarillion, it's basically going to be notes. And, they do it that route. And try to stay away from making it any freaking bullshit of the nudity and sex, as I mentioned, that HBO does with a lot of their shows. If they stay away from that, they'll be freaking successful, especially with the damn budget they have.
Yeah, no kidding.
I completely agree. I think if you make this like 13 and up friendly, and I think I think you could do it. I think the other thing people got to realize is this is I think, going to be more political intrigue and more foreshadowing towards Lord of the Rings. I think that's going to be kind of their uphill battle because people saying, "Oh, this is Lord of the Rings," and everybody, I think everybody they're going to have to do. I think right off the bat they're going to have to have the Lord of the Rings 1,000. They're going to have to preface it because I think if they don't do that, I think everybody's going to tune out expecting, "Oh, this is going to be the Hobbit," which I agree with James. No Technicolor rainbow, no fucking GoPro in the barrel scene. And no love triangle.
Yeah.
The love triangle was the one thing that kind of the actress who played that was incredibly pissed off because she took the job saying no love triangle because apparently she's been pigeonholed into that. And it was stupid. It didn't play any part of the movie. It didn't add any intrigue. It was just annoying. They could have cut that section out.
Yeah. Didn't improve anything.
No. And by the way, how the fuck do you turn a 300-page book into a 9-hour movie?
You gotta ask your buddy.
That's amazing to me. They should have done it in 2 movies. It does not to be.
Yeah, well, yeah. It's a long movie.
We'll see. I still don't believe how big it actually is. I mean, 465, that is insane.
That's
budget.
A lot of money. I'm assuming that these investors that are bringing in all this big money for them are all saying, okay, we expect a return on our investment. And here we go again, right? Well, they'll get 1 season and they won't get the return on the investment, and that'll be it.
I am kind of curious, like you said, like how do they plan, like what's their long game on this? Because they canceled the MMO. They canceled their Lord of the Rings MMO.
Yeah,
I just read that today.
I don't know.
So if there's no tie-in.
Does that... Yeah, got me. I don't know how they're going to do it.
Merch? Is there going to be you can buy a lot of Halloween gizmos and gadgets? I mean, I just
if it becomes popular, but if they do a Games of Thrones type of thing, you're not going to be selling a whole lot of merch with that.
I don't see them doing. I don't see them doing the Game of Thrones things because I think you have the Tolkien estate. I guarantee their claws are in this because they sued New Line Cinema. So I have a feeling they have a vision. Don't forget, Tolkien was also Christian, so there's some things I don't think he would allow if he was alive during this.
Yeah.
The only thing
he's not.
He's not. No, I do think the only thing.
I mean, I know that's shocking to you, John, but yeah, Tolkien isn't alive anymore.
Well, I know that, but I'm thinking the estate will keep up to his wishes. I do see them doing more cultural mores though, which may or may not actually matter.
That's amore.
I don't know. So we'll see.
That.
Yeah,
I was trying not to sing the song.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Articulated gun pod allowed Soviet aircraft to fire backwards, downwards, and even sideways.
Oh, okay. Okay. And can I get one?
Not in the state we're in. The Cold War era gun pods were a bizarre solution for strafing ground targets, but some linger on today.
I see it being very difficult to control and be accurate with. I think that's why it's not prevalent.
Especially with the yesteryear's technology. Today you could probably do it more.
Yeah, maybe. But we've got single seat fighters for the most part. You don't have a weapons officer, and those days are long gone. And a pilot's got enough to do just to try to keep the doggone aircraft in the air. And
that's why you have gunners, right?
Well, that's why you used to. But
I'm sorry, Goose. You just you didn't get that love and feeling.
Yeah, no, they're pretty much all these new aircrafts are single seaters.
That's amazing because for how much these damn things cost, you think they would just throw
in another seat
and make it a little redundant?
Probably would cost another $1 billion.
Yeah, probably because then you got to train them too and all that. So.
That's
it's like you guys may have never flown on an aircraft that actually had a navigator back in the
probably not
way back days. Oh God, John's gonna play a way back sound. But in the way back days, we used to They actually in the early 747s when they first came out. Yeah, he's got to do it. And when the early 747s came out, they had a navigator station, an engineer. It was called the engineer.
He was using a sextant and a.
I don't know about that. And the older aircrafts for the navigators, that was the case. He actually had a bubble above him where he would be taking star readings and things.
I swear I read in the book that the SR-71 had something like that. Also had a star navigation system, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, I don't know how they did. I mean, that aircraft in itself is just pretty amazing. So I'm sure they had all kinds of things to this day we probably don't know about in it. So, I mean, early navigation in an aircraft that was basically flying in space had to be amazing.
There's a book, and I'm trying to remember what it's called. If you ever, guys, get Sled Driver.
Yeah.
If you guys can ever find a copy of it, because it's rare in hen's teeth because there was one printing, it's an amazing book.
Well,
It talks about how, like, any of the quotes you see nowadays about the SR-71 are from that book. Like there's scenes talk about what was it? The most dangerous thing to the SR-71 was, it wasn't missiles, weather balloons. Could take out an SR-71.
Weather balloons could go up as high as they were at.
Yeah.
Where missiles and aircrafts could never catch them. Couldn't get up that high.
And what was it? There's a story in the book, because I've actually read it. It talks about, there's a missile coming, and so what they would do, they just put full throttle, and by the time the missile got where it was, it's
long gone.
It's in Provo, Utah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was quite the aircraft. One of the stories I remember reading, because I've read that book too, and it was talking about how they would call in to get ready to land, and they would be like 3 states away.
Yeah.
Right? From wherever they were. And so we're getting set up for our landing. And they go, wait a minute, you're in California and you're landing in Kansas. What? You're calling in now? That's how long.
Its turning radius apparently was described as states.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty.
Because it was going so fast, it had to slowly turn.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
My favorite part of the whole thing is they got most of the metal most of the titanium that it's actually made out of from Russia.
From Russia, yeah.
And the gasoline is also used, the gasoline or fuel for it is actually used to cool the plane itself.
Yeah. It's still an amazing. So my guess is that we have a newer version, more updated version of the SR-71 up there flying. So the whole idea, the reason why it became obsolete was because satellites pretty much have done everything that it used to do. We used to send, SR-71s out to fly over Russia and to see what they were doing. And then, hey, guess what? We invented satellites and we were able to do it. Yeah. So that pretty much put the SR-71 away, besides the fact that it was so expensive to fly and everything, because amazingly enough, the U-2 is still flying. So, yeah, and there you have, and its advantage only is, again, that it's basically flying up in space. But so what you can do is, instead of taxing a satellite to go over a particular hotspot, wherever it may be in the world, something's going on and we got to get immediate information from it. They send out a U-2 out.
Talk about a Goonie bird. I love how that thing lands. Talk about an albatross.
Oh, yeah, it's pretty amazing, isn't it? It's pretty bizarre.
If you guys haven't seen it, Google the U-2 spy plane landing. It's the weirdest thing.
Yeah, you can look at it. And also it's if you want to go see the static displays and actually see them sometimes landing and taking off, it's Beale Air Force Base up here in Northern California. That's their home base, and pretty amazing. So they're still using 1950 technology in this thing. But the camera resolution is just, I guess, from 90,000 feet, they can go ahead and take a picture of a person holding a deck of cards, and they can tell what's in their hands.
That's a hell of a reason to cheat at poker.
Boy, no kidding, huh? Good thing most games are
indoors. It's an
indoors.
expensive way to cheat at poker.
Yeah, that's true.
Hey, so James, did you finally get your cards?
I did, yeah.
The MadTrio cards. I got a story for that one.
I did. Oh, do you?
Oh, I was watching the tracking on it. I was trying to figure out what the heck was going on. Ryan actually got his deck of cards like 3 or 4 days before you did. And
Really?
Yeah. So here we are going from our place to your place, which is basically a 15-minute drive.
Yeah.
Right. So these cards went from my post office to San Francisco, back to Sacramento. Yeah. I don't understand what happened. It went from our place to San Francisco, back to Sacramento, back to Placer. I was watching. It was like they didn't know how Somerset. What? They didn't know where the heck. They just didn't know where to deliver.
That's weird. I would have thought I would have just gone to the Sacramento distribution center and then back.
Yeah, you would have
at
thought
the
so.
most.
It was very strange. It was like going like. They just couldn't figure it. No wonder the post office is having so many problems. If they could not get that simple of a delivery, it was 15 minutes away. It took a week.
I figured you guys had it shipped from wherever they made it to get here, not to go from your place to here.
Yeah.
Well, talk about delivery. We have a great way for you to always keep in contact with the MadTrio. Do you want to keep up to date on the maddest of the mad at the MadTrio podcast? Check out our social media feeds on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, or go to themadtrio.com.
And there you have it, folks.
So,
yes, we do.
Game of Thrones creator George R.R. Creepy Martin hints he's hugely behind on Winds of Winter. It also doesn't help that HBO paid him a fortune to stay that way.
Yeah, I was going to just say.
I love it. It says, for a decade now, the last book in the series, A Dance with Dragons, was published in 2011, but fans have begun to be hopeful that the wait for the next novel was almost over. He'll die before he finishes. He's getting too much money to just not do it. Are you going to watch the sequels, James? The prequels, excuse me.
I don't know.
That's up for debate.
Yeah, I haven't decided yet. It depends on which ones they go out with and how decent the story is.
Because Lord of the Rings I'll watch. The backstory of that show I have no interest in personally. It doesn't do anything for me.
So now, really. So Martin actually said that he was. Hold on. So he tweeted his schedule not that long ago about. I'm actually typing as I'm trying to formulate my thoughts. And it was that he's in this secluded cabin. And let's see. I think it's probably gone now. Oh, yep, that's the stuff on that. So he tweeted that he was sitting there stuck in this cabin of his schedule, that he's self-isolated and he's got, cabin fever because he's sitting there spending long hours writing this book, right? And I think I actually found it. Hold on. He actually said what his schedule was, where he gets up, he sits down, he has his breakfast brought to him by an intern, and then he spends a few minutes on his little responding to emails. Then he goes to write his book for a couple hours, has his lunch brought to him by an intern. Then he goes cuddles on a couch and watches a movie or a television show, then goes back to writing before he gets his dinner brought to him. And how horrible this life was of isolation and all this shit. And now he comes out and says that he's fucking behind?
I have a subtle feeling that it had to do with something with the number of zeros that were thrown his way.
Maybe it's the interns.
The interns?
Exactly. Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. It's probably the interns too and what they're doing.
Yeah.
But yeah, oh my god.
Maybe he's being blackmailed because he is kind of creepy that he did a few things, so now he's trying to get the
Here we
manuscript
go.
back.
So,
Allegedly.
when was this put out? This was put out June 23rd of 2020, and this is him. He says, we have feature films in development adapted from my story, Sand Kings, The Ice Dragon, The Lost Lands, television shows in development. And then he goes, but up here on the mountain, all of that seems very distant. Much of it has stuttered to a halt in any case until COVID goes away. Mostly it's just me in Westeros with occasional side trips to other places and the pages of a great book. This was in June of 2020, him saying that he's isolated up in a fucking mountain. And now he's saying that he's behind on this book that he's been writing for over a decade now.
Yeah, apparently.
And he can't get it done.
I have a feeling he's probably hit
Wouldn't
wider.
it be wonderful to be working on his schedule?
Dude, I would love that, and especially have the money, not worried about not making enough money to feed yourself or your family, or potentially losing your house or vehicles. Instead, just sitting up there twiddling your thumbs.
Yeah. Well, getting paid to sit there and twiddle your thumbs because HBO doesn't want you to finish whatever you were working on.
I actually hope he did finish it. It's one of those things that he's saying that, so that way when he croaks, it'll be automatically released. And
and I'm going to completely change the subject of that book and him and go to something else that struck me as very odd. I don't know if either of you guys are Tom Clancy readers.
Yeah, I read some. Yeah.
He's I really got him in the early time because he was very technical into the military.
Rainbow Six.
All the stuff was, when you read his book, every detail, he even talked about, the screws in a particular gun. He was very detailed, and sometimes it got a little, okay, let's get over it. But he was pretty amazing. But the thing that got me recently, I kept looking in and I'm seeing also the new releases from Tom Clancy, and I'm sitting there going, okay, wait a minute. Tom Clancy died in 2013.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going, how are there new releases?
He sold his name, didn't he?
So apparently, I don't know if it was him or his family or the publisher or whatever. There are a number of different authors writing under the nom de plume of Tom Clancy.
That's kind of creepy.
Well, so I went, okay.
Huh.
Wow, it's kind of interesting. And so you probably heard the character or know the TV show or have seen the movie of Jack Ryan.
Yeah.
Okay. So that character in some of the latest books has been spun off, as far as the writer goes, to another writer who's writing the story of Jack Ryan. And in the new Jack Ryan world, he actually becomes president of the United States.
From CIA to the presidency. Huh?
Yeah, he's the president of the United States.
Interesting.
And he has a son, Jack Jr. And so the new Jack Ryan is Jack Jr. now in this series of Tom Clancy books and what he's doing. And it's kind of interesting. I mean, to be honest with you, I've read, I go through about 5 or 6 novels a month at least. And
Okay.
yeah, anywhere between 4 and 8, I'm going to say as an average, depends on the length of the book. And so I'm in to like the third series of this new Tom Clancy released books by this new author. And I thought, how very clever to keep that guy's name going so that people would just go, oh, it's a new book by Tom Clancy. Yeah, but and those who don't know realize that he died quite a while ago now.
Are they any good?
Actually, they're quite good.
So, number one complaint, there's 3 or 4 motherfuckers writing for Tom Clancy, and they can't release another Splinter Cell game or another Splinter Cell book. They can just, come on, people. Splinter Cell is such a great universe.
There may be some limitations in what they can or can't do. I am not an expert on who's writing what under Tom Clancy, but at least from what I've seen, they take certain storylines and they run with it, and they develop their own angle of what's going on with it. And so far, the 3 novels I have just read here in the last week under the new author, and I'm not going to say his name right now because I'll get it wrong, are actually quite good.
All right.
I mean,
I became a fan of Tom Clancy's writing back when I went through my surgeries on my feet. I actually got a couple of his actual original books because he was dead by the time I started reading them. But I really liked his stuff, and so I mean, I'm not opposed to somebody using his name to write books, but it's like I'm always iffy about somebody picking up an old author's mantle and trying to, fill their shoes, because the writing style, the nuances of everything are
different, right? And rightfully so, because we don't necessarily want a copycat, right? So to speak, somebody who writes just like him. But it was very interesting that I kept seeing these new releases. It just came out, Tom Clancy. And I'm going, he's writing from the grave. I'm trying to figure out.
He's a ghostwriter.
There you go.
Was he single? Or was he married and kids?
Because
if he has married and kids, I'm hoping that they're getting
a family thing.
I'm hoping they're getting a spiff off of it, because otherwise I'd be nuclear. Because there's got to be something for his family if there's any members.
I'm sure that his family was taken well care of when he died.
Well, I know that, but if I saw
very famous guy,
if I had a father, who was famous like that, and new books kept coming out with his name, I'd want a percentage of the sales or something. I mean,
yeah. Well, I'm sure there are. My guess is, and don't forget, a lot of these guys, particularly when you go back as far as Tom Clancy did, it's his publisher that controls, a lot of the intellectual property. And so who knows about that? Because I'm not going to get into that part either, but you never know what's going on. But anyway, so far from the part that I've read by the particular author that's writing the Jack Ryan series group, doing a great job, I think. So I'm very happy, but it just struck me as very odd. I'm always looking for those kind of novels to read, and I'm constantly on the hunt. And I've actually run into a number of new authors that are actually pretty doggone good, but this kept popping up, new release by Tom Clancy, and I kept going, okay, I got to hunt into this a little bit more. And that's when I realized that they're using his name, but it's written by a different author, but it's actually done well. So
I have such a hard time finding books that interest me.
So I go down every time I finish one. Now I have almost gone exclusively to reading all my books on my iPad. I got an iPad mini. It works perfect for anything. I don't have to have a light on at night with Paul, because most of the time I read at night. Explains why I don't get to sleep until 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. But it's because I get involved in these books and I'm reading and I'm going to, another chapter and another chapter. And next thing I know, it's 2 o'clock. And so, what happens with that is that when you finish one book, Apple is kind enough to pop up and say, oh, I noticed that you're reading these type of books, and here's some suggestions for you, new books you might like, right? That's what they do. And
I'm taking to doing that on Amazon, on Kindle, and I find the same thing.
Yeah. So at least for me, I've actually found some new authors that I said, all right, and you know what? I think the only downside that I have, and it depends on how popular the author is in the books, and you're paying anywhere from $10 to $15 for a electronic book that you actually don't own.
Which, by the way, they could remove from your device.
And it's gone. So sometimes I kind of go, it keeps me from wanting to try a new author's book, because some of them are expensive. And I've gone down the rabbit hole a few times, and I'll try. Sometimes there's a free book. Like one of the new authors, like I came up with, and maybe next week I'll come up with the name of some of these. We could follow up on it. But they were actually giving away the first 3 novels of this writer's writing. And I went, oh, well, I can't lose on that. And they were actually okay. They weren't super great. They weren't in the level of Tom Clancy, but they were entertaining. And, I got through them. They were fairly quick to read. And so I did end up buying 3 or 4 of the novels as they go along. So for me, so far, Apple's done okay about suggestions. In other words, hey, try this author out, or look at this book. But then sometimes, here's my other problem, not actually owning the book or sitting on the shelf, is like going, God, did I read that book already? And I'm going, oh no, I'm not going to buy this same novel the second time, right? And that's the other issue that I have. I wanted to really tell you.
They don't give you like a download a preview or be able to read a couple of the pages.
Yeah, now they do, but that often doesn't always trigger. Oh, I remember that, because you'll remember a certain part of it, and then you won't maybe remember the beginning. Maybe that's his old age. I don't know, but yeah, they do. You can get a preview on them, but I still worry sometimes about I'm getting ready to click that button. Apple's getting better about it. I did it once recently, going to click on a book, and it said you've already purchased this book. Kind of, they give you a snapshot of all the books that you've had, and they show you, oh, you've already had that one in the series. So.
I think the last book I'm quote unquote reading or listening to was it's called Crash Dive, the complete series. It's about a World War II submarine. It's by Craig DeLuey. I guess he's usually a horror writer.
I think being in a World War II submarine would be a horror.
Yeah,
I think so.
Yeah,
it's super interesting to listen to the description of it, especially like this one part of the book, right? So they got to pick up civilians, so they have women and children on board a submarine, which is, if you're a submariner, up until I think the last couple of years, women were not allowed. It was totally taboo. And I heard they're changing that at some point.
Yeah, they're trying to figure out how to make that work. Let's go on a boomer, and you sit on the bottom of the ocean for 3 months at a time, and my bunkmate's beginning to look pretty good. And that was when it was just all guys. So you can imagine how that's gonna play out.
So it's an interesting book, and the other one that you may like. It's by Brandon Sanderson. It's a super fantasy, but it's one of those books that there's no explanation for things. They just go into it and expect you to understand, which is kind of cool up until the point they talk about something. It's like, what the F are they talking about? And like halfway through the book, they explain. It's like, they should have explained what these things are.
Don't they have a preamble where they list everything and what it is?
The guy doesn't read it.
Oh, okay. Well, that's different. Can't help that guy.
Yeah, right. Actually, oddly enough, my favorite book for me, did you guys have a favorite book? My favorite book's probably for me is actually a graphic. It's the Vampire Hunter D novels are amazing. And then it's actually a graphic novel that an anime is based off called Dark Side Blues are probably my 2 favorite books. Like
Johnny the Homicidal Maniac.
Oh, and Count of Monte Cristo.
Oh,
I love that book. I love listening to the book. Reading the book is difficult.
There we go. That answers that. That's the why. Because you listened to it, you didn't read it. Trying to read the book is like, that was a college thing. It's like, okay, we're gonna read this. It's like, oh,
because when you were 25, it was 100 years old, so it was already difficult to read.
It was very difficult.
But it's an amazing book. If anybody get a chance, or like the Three Musketeers.
English, and it's not easy to read because it isn't common to our form of English, so it's very difficult.
Or the words like countenance is all over. I think Count of Monte Cristo, and they said the countenance on his face, and I remember I was like pulling over the side of the street with a dictionary. What the oh, because there's like I've been called a living dictionary, but there's words that don't come. Like I had to look up.
And countenance is one that you're not familiar with.
Incontinence? Is that what you were saying?
Yeah, there
you
go.
know what incontinence is, don't you?
Countenance.
Oh, countenance. Okay, not in.
Well, because how often do you hear in modern language somebody talking about a politician's countenance? With certain politicians, you hear about incontinence, but you don't hear about the other way. So it just kind of
So, you're talking about favorite books. Probably my all-time favorite author, and I've read him a couple times, and I'm probably going to go back to write him again, is Ayn Rand and Atlas Shrugged, and that series of books. Because back in the 60s, when I first read that book, it was like a revolution in my mind. It was like, oh my God, there's a different train of thought and there's a different way of looking at things. And
this is when you left the Wavy Gravy and the Hog Farm, right?
Probably, yeah. I couldn't remember when I left, so. Bastard.
Well, by technical definitions, I'm not a bastard.
Anyway, so yeah, I mean, you were talking about favorite authors and favorite books. I mean, what you wrote in those books that you wrote, in the style and what the stories were all about, and the character development and the different trains of thought. That period of time, it was a mind blower for me. It was like, wow. So there's my favorite book, and I actually read it.
Yeah, well, good for you. I've actually read all the Vampire Hunter D books.
Oh, all right. I'm just making sure.
Did you ever have a book that you wanted to? You heard the second book was amazing, so you forced yourself to read the first book
to get to the second book.
To get later on. So there's a book called it's by R.A. Silvadori. And I heard this certain number of books, it might have been 3, 4, and 5 in the novel, were supposed to be absolutely amazing. So I forced myself to read like 1, 2, and 3. And the first book is just like I had to force myself just to get through it, so just so I could get enough backstory.
It's like slow forever type of thing. Developing characters and things that just take forever.
And it's about like, it's hard edge sci-fi if you don't fantasy if you don't know R.A. Silvadori. And so it's about a dark elf. So it's all about the universe and their god and goddesses. And I'm just like,
yeah. No, I totally understand that. I have done that.
So it reminds me of when you talked about wanting to finish Rainbow Six. Because you said you said at the time it was the most technical book you've ever read.
For that genre, yeah. I mean, the way it was written, it was.
Because you said it was even too much for you. It's like...
It was.
What about you? For James, you have any other thing besides Johnny the Homicidal Maniac?
Well, you were talking about a book that you were just like, you forced yourself to read. I mean, I guess you could say Numbers.
You want to explain what that is?
What? Do I really need to explain it? It's the Bible.
Yeah, to the audience.
Someone needs to go read Somebody needs to go read.
Who wrote the Bible?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Someone who was very bored and sat down and numbered all of Israel when they weren't supposed to, for one. And they wrote it all down. It's all genealogies. That's all it is. This person beget this person who beget this person who beget this person.
Right.
That's the entire book.
Wait until you hear a sermon on it.
Notes. That's the Cliff Notes version.
Cliff Notes version. Yeah, the original's still in the sea, the Dead Sea Scrolls that they're still trying to decipher.
James gave you the TLDR.
Yeah.
Sermons of it are amazing because even the pastor telling it, it's like, I don't know why I'm doing this. I chose this today.
Yeah. Why did I do that?
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. Anyways, but there you go. that should answer your question.
Yeah. Okay. Well, all right, but that one doesn't count.
It doesn't?
No.
That's true. It's not fantasy. So James, pick a fantasy.
Literally, the book actually says numbers, Rob. It does count.
Okay. Very clever. Haha. I'll give you 1 point for that.
I would actually have to say, if you want to talk about books that you heard were amazing, you sat down, and I wouldn't say the first book because the first book is actually really good, but the other ones that followed it were not as good, and I would say the Jurassic Parks.
Oh,
The first book was really good. I always heard, the book was really, really good, And then so I sat down and I read Jurassic Park, and then I read the other ones. And the first one, really good. The other ones weren't, I don't know. I don't remember. I didn't really look. But they just weren't as great, honestly. So, and they were nothing like the movies, actually, just the other books.
I actually don't want to read the books because I wanted to at one point because I have such a great memory of when I went to see it in the theaters. And I know that sounds weird, but it's a memory I'll never forget because we waited in line. My aunt, rest her soul, waited for hours in line, and then we got there and waited an additional hour or two to see Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
And a theater with 4 screens, and so that's one sole reason because I was like what James said. I've heard it's an amazing book. Even the old guy at the time said it's a pretty good book, and was pointing out scenes. Hey, this isn't in there. They're missing this scene.
Yeah, that. And unfortunately, that's not unusual. You'll get an author that'll write an absolute hit book, their very first book, whatever it may be. It's just an absolute crusher. Everybody loves it, makes it, sells a movie deal and all that, and then everything that trails off from there.
I wonder if the author made any money from the books. Like technically, if I remember correctly, Forrest Gump didn't make any money. Hollywood accounting.
Yeah, so that was creative Hollywood. That's exactly right.
So that's the way they screw the authors out of stuff. Because he promised that the second book, because there's actually a sequel to Forrest Gump, in book form, but the author promised that Hollywood will never get their hands on it ever.
Well, Tom Hanks is too old to play the lead anyway. Would never happen.
He did really good.
He's got to go back on the shrimp boat.
He did really good as Disney. Did you ever see that, Mr. Banks?
I didn't.
Playing Mr. Banks? That was a great movie.
Banks?
Yeah. Did you ever see it, James? Yeah, did we do that for the show, James?
Django Unchained?
No, Playing Mr. Banks. It was the Walt Disney, Tom Hanks. That was a really good movie. I feel, for some reason, I feel like that's the last movie I actually sat down and watched.
Oh, we're back in the Real Flicks reviews. Oh.
Huh.
Yeah.
Wow, this is what we call the pewtering out. Everybody's kind of like,
yeah.
Hour's up. Let's go.
Hold on, let me see if there's anything else.
You want to close this radio out? Like I did last week.
I'll mute it. I'm just seeing if there's anything else interesting on my social media feeds.
I see the way that works.
There's nothing interesting. So, ladies and gentlemen, for the California Pariah, for the Fat Man, and for the aged old guy, as always, thank you for listening.
Good night.
Goodbye.